Hi, hello. Hi, hello. If you can hear me, please tell me how the sound is like. Okay, cool. Uh, so if everybody is hearing me okay, we will start today with Unreal Engine, and I will show you the basics of interface today and the modules which are packed inside the engine. And if you can see everything okay, just write in the chat. Is there any technical problems or something? So also, while I'm streaming, it will be like an hour, I think, maybe a little more. We will see. If you have any questions, just type in the chat. I will make a pause once in a while, and I will check up the chat, so we can solve the problems immediately when they arise. Okay. Okay. So let's start with the basics. With the Epic Games launcher. So first of all, I heard you on the Discord that and in your project propositions that you will need something more like a modeling type thing, like Maya and 3D Studio Max. I already have a live stream in Polish. So if you have like a limited amount of language knowledge, so you can check this out too. But also we can make some streams. Some streams will make additional streams just for you, so you can catch up with that stuff. But also don't be shy and ask us everything. We will try to help you right away online. With the screen sharing thing that we have on Discord, and your activity online is encouraging for us to be more active online. So it works in two ways. For the launcher, if you want to start with interactive VR, interactive 3D projects, interactive, I don't know, games, entertainment or whatever, you need to download this thing. So, and first of all, we have here the Unreal Engine, and we have the library bookmark here, where can we install the latest version of the engine. So, as you can see here, we have different versions up to 4.0.2, and these versions sometimes are useful when we use external plugins. If you're searching the internet for a solution which is not present in a modern version of the engine, you can always use the older version. So you can access this by clicking the plus sign over here. Right now I don't need it. The latest stable version of the engine is 4.24.3, right? So we'll work with this one. Down below we have all the projects that will be created by you or uploaded from the internet or whatever. Every project that's allocated and which are switched in the engine, which you edited in the engine before, will appear here. And down there is a vault, and the vault is a really cool stuff because it's like a plugins, already ready-made solutions, materials, sounds, music, I don't know, whatever, 3D models, all kind of stuff here. And as you can see, I have tons of things here, and all these things you can get from the Unreal Engine marketplace right here. Most of it, of course, it's not free, otherwise it will be not called a marketplace, but there is a pretty big collection of free items which are free for the months, which will be available for free each month, and you can buy them for free. and they will be added to your library, to your vault, and can keep them forever. And also there is a permanent free collection which is also expanded each month. So you should, if you want to find some solutions which you're not familiar with, you can always use the marketplace on the free category. It will help you understand the basics of the engine, use some additional stuff, and so on. So you don't need to create everything from the ground up, like the models, assets, and so on, and code, of course. Most important is the code. So this is the basic things in the launcher. Then we should start our Unreal Engine. I already did that, and I selected the third-person example, and maybe I should show you how the selection process is looking and what kinds of types of project we can create. Okay, select or create new project, and here we can recent open projects that we were working on in the first place, and then we have new project categories, and they're from version 4.24. they're really neatly combined here in 4 categories: games, film and television, architecture, and automotive and product design. As you can see from the names, these are different industries, we can say, which are targeted by this software. Games we will be mostly using the games category, but you can also check up the film and architecture. They're really nice solutions for creating and compositing video and integrating real-time 3D graphics with the film. Maybe some of you will find this useful. Architecture is more for visualization purposes, but it have simplified programming and rendering pipeline, so you will have more flexibility, and it will be easier just for you to create visually interesting scenes from the ground up. But if we click, for example, the games category, we can see different presets which are already present in the Unreal Engine. And as I said, I was using the third person. I will tell you why in a moment, but mostly as we are working with VR, we are using the VR virtual reality preset. It have all the functionality you need with to start work with VR. You have the controller, you have the goggles positioning, and all other stuff. So it just start this example, plug in your VR headset, and you're good to go. But as I said, today we'll go with third person because it has some functionalities which will better be represented in this template, so I can explain you how the engine works from the ground up. So that's how the interface looks up, and before we jump into Unreal Engine, let's check the chat real quick. Okay, sound is good, fine. Julia is asking, everything is fine for me too. Will the streaming be recorded? Yes, of course, streaming will be recorded, and it will be available online on YouTube shortly after the stream. So just you'll need just to wait like half an hour, I think, or something like that, for YouTube to crank it to the maximum quality, and then you're good to go. All streams will be available publicly on my channel, so if you want to see some other tutorials which are in Polish, you can also do that. And also, if you want to be notified that I'm online or something, you can always subscribe, but it's optional, of course. Okay, so now let's start with the engine and see what the interfaces look like. First of all, we have our view. Navigation in Viewport we're navigating in Viewport with our WASD buttons on the keyboard and holding the right mouse button. Also, you can rotate your view with the right mouse, zoom in and zoom out with your mouse scroll, and it's like a semi follow-up navigation with the left mouse button, when you can move forward and backwards, also looking around. More controls about the viewport we will talk a bit later. Let's just jump really quick on all the panels we have here. First of all, our main panel on the top represents like the standard panel for all the programs which are available there, when you can create new level, open new level, save current, and so on. Also package our project to different platforms. We will tackle this stuff in the end of the series rather than the beginning. On the top side we have the basic shortcuts to our project functionality. Here we can open the project settings, plugins, world settings, which are applied to the level which is open right now. Project settings are global settings which are applied to the whole project. Blueprints, here we can edit the blueprint of a level which is currently opened, and also tweak some blueprint classes. About all this we'll talk a little bit later. Also we have here the cinematics. This is the tab for creating cutscenes, they call in video games, where we are not controlling anything, just watching the virtual reality and the virtual characters play their roles. We can add cuts, add post-processing to this. It looks very similar to a video editing software then. Build, we can build our project here, and this means that here we can pre-compute some things, for example like lighting and reflections, for example, because as I was telling you on the first classes when we were on our faculty, I was talking about the difference between the real-time graphics and the pre-computed graphics, pre-rendered graphics. And the thing is with real-time graphics that the things that we see on the screen are rendered each frame, and to get the most smooth experience in an interactive environment we will need like 60 frames per second, so it's a lot. And to compute this stuff successfully, we will need to optimize our scene. So the build here is actually for optimizing our scene. So we build reflection captures, for example, and we have all our reflections in place. So all the static meshes which are appearing in our level will be baked into the reflections, so we don't need to compute them each frame. They will be computed only once when we press build. The same thing for the lighting. We can create a static lighting which is only affecting the static objects, and the shadows from the static objects will be baked into the level, so they will not be dynamic because these objects are obviously static and will be not moving. So this actually for this, it also tackles geometry. So if we have a procedural geometry or collisions, we also can build this here. Also paths and LODs. This is for more gamey projects, I will say. Paths is obviously for artificial intelligence navigation in our level, and LODs is a different level of details for our objects, and I was talking about this on our first classes too. And also we have here the play button where we can test our project. Now it's a simple level with a controller with it. This character that I have, it's called the controller, and we can see that he can bump into the walls, he can jump up, jump down, and there is actually nothing more here, just a preset. Also, when we click on the arrow near our play button, we can see the different views we can take when we are testing our project. If we are building our project for mobile, we can plug our mobile to the PC or a Mac and test the functionality on this device immediately, or we can start it in a window. Yeah, I don't have connected any mobile device, so do nothing for me right now. New window editor will just open our project in a new in a new window, which we can put somewhere else. And standalone game will publish your project. It will bake it, bake everything up with your project, compile all the scripts, and evaluate it. So it's like launching the game, the finished game, the finished project. And simulate is just the simulating of the scene, where you can see the animations are kicking up. So he's trying to move, but I have no control over him. So it's just simulating my scene without any interactions that I can use. Okay, so this is like the basic stuff here. Alright, so here we're controlling our scene. Also we can see here the save current button, and this only applies to the level. So when I'm saving with save current button, I'm saving only the information which is stored in our level. So like the placement of the objects, the lighting, the world settings will be saved with this button. But if I'm changing the assets, so assets are, as a reminder, is everything which you're filling up with your project. So like sounds, textures, models, animations, it's all assets. So to save the changes in your assets, you will have to click Save All. And this button also saves your level too. So it's more important to save with this button or using the Save All in the menu. Also, you can see the shortcut here. It's Control Shift S. Okay, so let's now go to our content browser, which is on the bottom here. I'm using the default layout of the Unreal Engine. You can change layout the way you want. You should grab any bookmark, any panel, and you can move it around. You can actually do whatever you want with it. I prefer to have the content browser down here. And let's see. The content browser is where all your assets in. So here you are editing all the parts that make your project tick. So here we have like geometry already created for us, and we have like basic cubes which are located in this scene. Mannequin, this is our mannequin. This is our basic character, which is controlled by player controller. And you can see that mannequin is has animations, so we have like animation assets. Character, so it's like the materials of this mannequin, his mesh, and textures for his material. I also added starter content when I'm creating my project. It's like the next step after creating, selecting the preset, I'm sorry. And I choose starter content to show you some different modules, which we'll be talking a little bit later, but if you don't want them, you don't have to load it with your new project. And then there is the third person. Let's see what's here. It's some meshes for the level 2. Again, as you can see, all this geometry is taken from these static meshes. Third person blueprint. This is where all the coding is happening. And I already was telling you about this, but in Unreal Engine we can program things with two different methods, C++ and blueprints. And C++ is like the regular programming language when we can write scripts like a text formatted in Visual Studio, for example, or other program, and that will be it. But blueprints are much more interesting for us because it's a visual type of programming. And let's see. In third-person blueprint, we have a third-person character. This is a blueprint for our main character. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I have a spike of a sound here. Yeah, I think it's okay. And if I open this up, you can see how the blueprints actually look like. Here we can see all the connections, all the blocks which this code is built of. And we will talk about blueprints and basic logic, I think more like per project for you, because there's actually everything you can create with this. And there's like actually a limit to this, so there's a lot of stuff you can make with blueprints. So I think we'll be working more like per project basis here. So if you come up with something, we will be creating this with blueprints and create an additional stream or a tutorial just for that. So just let us know. Okay, so we'll talk about blueprints and the interface here a little bit later. Game mode, also a blueprint, but it's another blueprint. As you can see, it consists only with values, and these values define what types of characters and rules there are in our scene, and what else. And also we have here maps, so there's actually not that much to this preset, blueprint wise, of course. And this is how the map or level asset looks like. So as you can see, each asset is actually represented by a different color. They're all color coded, so it will be easy for you to identify them. So the light orange are levels, right? The blue ones are blueprints, of course. Meshes are like cyan, and the static meshes, right? The static meshes are cyan, but the skeletal meshes are purple, like pink, more pink. So you can identify the different assets by different color codes which they have. And materials, as you can see, they are or light green or dark green. There is also a difference because this is a material, this is the material instance, and I will talk about this later, of course. To create a new asset, right, you just need to right click on any open space here, and you have basic basic assets types like blueprints, levels, materials, particle system, and substance, which I don't have, so we'll not creating this. And also subcategories, animations, which we can select here, all the stuff which is connected to the animation, artificial intelligence, behavior trees, blackboards, blendables, it's all about the materials, blueprints, different types of them, editor utilities, foliage, materials and textures, media. As you can see, there's a lot of this. Media is actually quite interesting because you can import into the engine your video or your audio, and you can combine this and display video inside the 3D environment. This is pretty cool. Physics. Unreal Engine has a built-in very good physics simulation, sounds, and user interface. So you can also create some kind of interfaces here. But when creating user interfaces, we should remember that with VR they're quite different than just the normal user interface we see in games, for example, or applications. So this is our content browser. Here also we can access this list by clicking Add to New. Also we can import external files, and as you can see, we have a lot of different formats here. We have all sorts of 3D formats, but we will be working with FBX mostly, as you can see here. But there is like lots of them, so you can import pretty much everything here. Save all, as I said before, and here's the tree for all the folders we have, so we can quickly switch between them. In the view options, we can change some representation of our items, of our assets. For example, we can take the list, we can take the columns, we can take the tiles. I'm always working with the tiles. It's just more convenient because you can see this little thumbnail here of what this object actually is. You can show and hide some different stuff that you don't want or don't want. You can also show favorites and favorite some assets which you're using all the time, and they will appear under here. Scale of the thumbnail, also you can make it bigger or smaller if you wish. Also, you can turn on the real time of the thumbnails. What it means in that, when we're using the materials, for example, there is sometimes animated materials. I think this one is animated, but I'm not sure. Anyway, if you have an animated material which have some kind of motion in it, like blinking colors, for example, or whatever, this will display this in the thumbnail. Thumbnail edit mode, you can edit how the thumbnail looks like, but we will not just do this right now. Okay, so this is our content browser, your best friend if you want to integrate and put your stuff in the engine. Then we have our world outliner in here, and here we can see all the objects which are present in our current level. So in here we can see it's already very neatly organized here by the folders. You have lighting, render, and so on. You can create your own folders here, create subfolder, and so on. So you can organize all your stuff here. Also, you can access the blueprints of your objects placed here by clicking on the link on the left side, and it will bring up the blueprint editor. So it's actually pretty straightforward. You also can hide some objects here. For example, you can hide my character. But there is a difference a little bit to this. If I hide some element like these stairs in the level and hit play, I will see the stairs anyway. So it's just for the editing purposes. If you really want to hide an object which is not appeared in the game, you should do this in the properties, and I will show you in a second. When we select something, it will have its properties shown below. And the most important here are, of course, the hierarchy of this object. As you can see, our stairs actually contains only one object. It's a static mesh, because it's very important and actually really popular in the Unreal Engine to create an object which consists of different parts, like our character. If I select it, as you can see, it has different objects. It has capsule component, which is working like a collision, so it don't like fall through the walls or something. Mesh, which is actually the character we can see here. Camera boom and follow camera is a component, so the camera is actually behind our character and we can rotate it. Also, character movement, it's a component which is not visually represented, but it's like a code component, so it helps our character to move around with the keys which we are pressing. So this is like the hierarchy of our selected object, and then we have transform, our first category here. As in all other 3D programs, we have location, so it's like the transform, and we can see the location of relative to the object or to the world. This is important when we combine two objects together. I will show you this in a bit. So this defines the location of our character. As you can see, we can move it here with these numbers. Rotation, the same thing, and the scale, so we can scale it whatever we want. So this is the transformation panel. Okay, here we have our mesh. It's also I should notice that all these properties are changing depending on what you have selected. So as you can see, the stairs have static mesh properties, material properties, and physics, yeah, and other stuff which are pretty generic. But our character has much more options here. If we select this, I'm not selected. Yeah. If you select our character, you can see we have all the different different parameters here, like which animation we are using, which skeletal mesh it is, if it has clothing, how physics behave, and so on and so on. So all the properties are actually dependent on the what object or component we're selecting. But what parameters are actually common for the most objects? And the most common parameters are actually lightning, clothing simulation, no, clothing simulation, no, virtual texture, no, tags, activation, and cooking. So these parameters are actually pretty common. If we check this with our stairs, for example, we can see the same thing: tags, activation, cooking. And what this thing does, that activation is defines if this if this object is interactable, or it has some kind of animation attached to it. We can define if this object will be activated, like have its animations and interactions activated from the beginning of when we click play, or there should be a condition. So the stairs obviously don't have any interactivity to it, so it's not active. Cooking, we can create objects for our scene, but we can click its editor only, so this object will be absent in your cooked project. And the cooking is meant like when you cook a project, you like finishing it. So you are finished your project, everything is working, everything is in place, and you press File, Package, Project, and select the platform, and it will start cooking. It's a mystery why it's called here package and here is cooking, but I guess it's like we're packaging project and then it starts cooking. So cooking is a process of I like what to say, it's like preparing it to the finalizing it, so you can fire it up from your folder when it's finished. But we will test all this stuff and you will see for yourself. So yeah, we can create additional objects which are just editor, so it will help us build the project and create it, but they won't be present in the final build. Replication is for multiplayer only. It defines if the object is visible to other players, because the Unreal Engine is built with multiplayer in mind from the beginning. And the actor, so our object is an actor, so it has different actor properties here. So there's really a lot of them, but when we will do stuff like we'll create some characters and import it in there, we will create animations, interaction, and we will see how the properties are working. Okay, so I encourage you, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat, okay? No questions for now. Cool. Okay, so now let's see what modules we have inside our engine. So as you can see, the interface. Also I forgot about this panel here, which is actually important too, because here it's like our palette. From this panel we can create some predefined objects. Let's say, it's really a huge tooltip. So these objects are already made for us. For example, if I bring up the sphere, you can see this sphere already has a material. It's already defined as an object, so you can drag and drop it everywhere. But also we have some more interesting stuff like box trigger, which is not visible to when we play the game, right? You can see there is nothing here, but it will help with functionality. So it's like a trigger box, as it says. It's like a button. When our character enters it, something will happen, and of course we need to program it so it's to work. Sphere trigger, the same thing. So basic, I like the shortcuts. Yeah, you can create an empty character, empty actor, empty pawn, and so on. I will tell you about the difference between different characters and objects and whatnot a little bit later. Lights, we have different options here, like skylight. It's all taken from the 3D software programs. Directional light, point light. You can bring up anything, and we will talk about lights in later. Cinematic visual effects, like visual effects are like fog, atmosphere, and all this kind of stuff, or everything which is connected to the 3D environments. You can test them by yourself. There is lots of them. Geometry, which is actually which is called brushes here. This is the geometry which we can edit in the engine, so we don't need to use our 3D modeling software. We can create simple objects for the levels right here in the engine. Volumes are all the invisible objects which help us with programming and visualizing our scenes, and all classes is like the whole objects in one huge list. So this is our palette panel. It also consists of different bookmarks here, as you can see, and they are, the first one is paint, and it's for painting the vertices. It's called vertex paint. It's used for mixing the materials on different objects, so you can paint one part of the object different material and another with a different one. So it's for painting landscapes and objects. Landscape is generating the landscape. As you can see, it shows me the bounds with the green. This is our landscape, but we will not use this right now. Foliage is for creating forests, grass, bushes, whatever on your landscape. And the last one is for editing the geometry, the brushes, which I was talking previously. So this is the panel which controls the vertices, and you can edit the geometry with this. Yeah, so and this is basically it for the interface of the main interface we can see here, the main panels. Now let's see how we can transform our objects in the scene. And for this I will grab a cube and drop it in my scene, in my level, to be correctly. Now, as you can see, he's saying that light needs to be rebuilt. Yeah, because I made an object which is a static mesh, as you can see here in the mobility. When the object is static, it can't be moved by other objects, even moved with the code. So if you add a functionality to it to jump around, for example, it will not happen because this object is static. For now, to eliminate this error, I just click movable. So this goes away, because now this object, we can push it around, and it will not bake the static lighting I was talking before. So when we have our object, this buttons here helps us transform our object in the scene. So first one, select and translate objects, and we can move our objects with this and select them. The shortcut is W on a keyboard, like in 3D Studio Max and Maya, so it will be really intuitive for you. As you can see, it worked just like in every other 3D application. Select and rotate, the next one, the shortcut is E, the same as Max and Maya, okay? And we can rotate our object any direction we want. Oh, sorry. Yeah, like this. And the last one, scale, where we can scale our object, so it's pretty obvious. When you notice that I'm, for example, scaling my object, right? And you can see here that the scale parameters here are changing, and they're changing with the same amount. So as you can see here, I have like scale on the z-axis and 1.5, for example, and then I can jump to 175 or 2. Okay, so this is like snapping, which is already turned on in the Unreal Engine, and all the snapping is represented by these three buttons. The first is the snapping for our movement, so translation of the object, so we can translate them in increments, the rotation and the scale. So we can turn this on and off, or select the step. For example, the current step is 10 for moving objects around. If I select 50, as you can see, the steps are much bigger. So it also helps you to build your scene the way you want it to be built. So if you want objects created on even with the even distances between themselves, you can use the snaps. Okay, let's take it to 10. Also, we can turn surface snapping. It means that the object will stuck to the surfaces which are already represented in our level. As you can see, our character is not represented as a surface because it's an actor. Not an actor, I'm sorry, it's a character. Okay, so we can snap it to surfaces too, and also we can define if the object rotates with the surface. As you can see now, it's not rotating. So let's turn this off for now. Okay, so let's rotate this object a bit and let's see how the pivot point is working. So here we can cycle our transform gizmo into local and world space, right? So world space, as you can see here, it's where all the pointy transforms of our object are directed as the same as our world transform. Our world transform is represented here in the left corner. You can see that the Z axis is actually the up axis, like in 3D Studio Max, not like in Maya. Keep in mind, when you're importing from Maya, you will need to switch your Z axis in Maya. So the objects won't be turned around in Unreal Engine. But if I turn on the local coordinate system, like the local transform, as you can see now, the transform of my object actually pointing into the direction the object is looking. So you can transform the object this way. And as you can see, the scaling only works in local coordinates, so you can transform object from world space. Well, and this is understandable because then the object will be distorted if it will be transformed in the world space when it's skewed a little bit, for example. So if you want to zero your changes which are created, you can also click the yellow return button. Return arrows appears each time you change something in your object. So as you can see, I changed the transformation, so I can click the yellow arrow and my object will be going into its default parameters. So for this cube, its default location is 0, 0, 0 and default rotation is 0, 0, 0, 2. So if you ever change something and you want to bring it back to the default, you can always press the yellow arrow, which is really useful. So this is how you transform your objects, right, in the scene. Now a little bit about the viewports and the navigation. To change the speed with which you are moving around your camera in the editor, you use the scroll. When you're holding up the right mouse button, as you can see, and moving the scroll and scrolling up, the speed of your camera increases. If I scrolling down, you can see that the camera is slowing down. Scrolling up, and the camera is speeding up. So you can tweak the speed on the fly with the mouse scroll. But also you can do this with this button here, which is called camera speed. And here you can define the default speed of the camera, and also the acceleration, so it can be really speedy. If you have a super huge scene, you can crank this up and move normally between the objects. Okay, so also you can switch to 4 different viewports here by clicking maximize this or restore this viewport. So as you can see, there is our really common view for our 3D environment. As you can see here, with right mouse button we can move around, zoom with mouse scroll, and this is some kind of measure tool when we can measure the distance. As you can see, it's not only in Unreal units, because all this transformation is in Unreal units, and one Unreal unit is one real meter. So you also can see that we have the ruler here, which shows the distance between the objects. So you can really sense the scale of your scene in these viewports. But most of the time it's easier to work with the perspective viewport and just fly around. Also, you can change the display of this viewport. For example, by clicking the arrow here, we can turn different options on and off. So we can show the FPS, for example. So it's representing the frames per second which we are currently rendering. So as you can see, we have around 120 frames per second for this scene, because it's actually not much of going on here. So it's pretty stable. Also, we can show different objects here, field of view for our camera, and so on and so forth. So different options. We'll not just look at them right now. First thing which we can change here is the perspective. As you can see, we're now in perspective. We can switch to top, left, and other projections. So also there is a new thing like cinematic viewport. Cinematic viewport is really useful for creating cinematics or cutscenes, as it's already applied the basic functionality of the cinematic, like the motion blur. I don't know if you can see this, but when I'm moving my camera really fast, it blurs the edges, so it looks more natural, more film-like. Also, you have here different grids for your camera, so you can create, I don't know how to say it, a pleasing video shoots, something like this. So really useful for creating like cinematic experience. Yeah, and also when you're creating the cinematics from here, it will show a bunch of more information here, like in Adobe Premiere. So you have like play, pause button, and so on and so forth. But now it's really basic. You can see only this because we haven't done any cinematics in this scene. So let's disable the grid and let's switch to default viewport. Okay, next thing is how the objects are represented in the viewport. As you can see, the default option is lit, so it's like we see them now. Unlit shows us the plain color of the object, of the material, just to be more accurate, as you can see here. Wireframe shows us the edges of our meshes. Detail lighting shows us in gray key everything, so we can really see the shadows, how they're working. For example, what is this? This is not good shadow. Yeah. So this is like, and I think this is actually turns everything like film white. So you actually, if you want to change the white balance of your scene, if you want to be really cinematic, you should really use this option to balance your whites in your scene. Lightning only, as you can see, works pretty much the same. Its only difference with actually it only renders lights, no textures, but default lighting renders textures too. Reflections, As you can see, you can test how the reflections are calculated in your scene. As you can see, this is how they look. So if you're about to create some reflective materials, you can probably guess how the scene will look like. Well, now it's not really looking good, as we have only one object to render the reflections. It looks quite trippy, so let's switch to something else. Player collision, as you can see here, everything in green, in cyan to be precise, is actually collidable, so the player will not go through this geometry but stuck on it. But the purple one are actually not collidable, so this box is not collidable with our object because it's like a movable object and we have to add physics to it to collide. Visibility collision. Why it's not showing? No, it looks the same. Visibility collision is not showing right now because we need some kind of camera to see how the visibility is working. Also, we don't set any LODs, so we will not be seeing any changes here. I'm not sure. Okay, so optimization, we can optimize a little bit of Viewport if we are working on a very heavy project. We can see the different filters. So this filter shows us the complexity of our scene. The rule is pretty simple. The warmer the colors, the more complex this part of the scene. In this scene, actually, there's nothing heavy, so it's lighting-wise, of course. So there's nothing here. Light map density. Also, as you can see, the color and the checkers are representing the textures of the light map. So, as you can see, the largest one is on the floor, so it's taking more memory to render. Stationary lights overlap. We don't have this because everything is green, because we have one stationary light, I guess. Yeah, this is the light source and it's stationary, so there's nothing to overlap to, it's only one thing. Shader complexity, and this is actually really interesting, but when we will look at this when we work with our materials. So this is our different lenses for you to see and understand how the rendering process in Unreal Engine is working. But this is a really huge theme, so it needed its own lesson. Okay, and so we have different visualizers for our landscapes if we have one, and also the exposure settings. So you can tweak the exposure of your viewport no matter how it's set in your game settings. Alright, so this is our viewport and everything connected to it. I was being a little bit rambling here, but I hope that that you actually understand what I was talking about most of the time. Alright, so the chat is dead. Okay, so I can talk and talk and talk. Okay. Let me check what the time is. Okay, so we have like 10 more minutes, something like this. So let's talk about different types of objects because this is important. And let's see. With our starter content. So let's see how many there is different types of objects. As I was saying before, if we take our character, it has it's called a skeletal mesh object. So every mesh which has a skeleton attached to it, as you can see here, we see all the parts of the skeleton for this character. All the parts for this character are actually manipulating the mesh which is attached to it. I think we're pretty familiar with skinning and skeletons in general in 3D software. Also we can animate our character in Unreal Engine 2, so you can record your animations. So this is the skeletal mesh. If you want to animate something, it doesn't have to be a character. It can be something else, but if you have added a skeletal animation to it, it will be represented as a skeletal mesh. So the skeletal mesh is everything which is animated with the bones. But if we have our static meshes, let's see. I really want to put it from the asset browser. So let's see, props. What we have here? Yeah, we have a chair. The chair is a good example. As you can see, the chair is a static mesh, and if we open up it, you can see the editor is looking a little bit different. So this is how our object is represented here. You can see that it has a material parameter here, and there is nothing actually else here to tweak, except for collision, of course, materials and some LODs, which I was talking about a lot. Yeah, and as you can see, this is the collision for our object. The static meshes are not animated in any way. That's why they're called static meshes. But we can simulate physics for them. If you like, select our object and go to physics in its properties and select simulate physics. It will calculate the mass of the object depending on its proportions. Click, for example, simulate. You can see the object is falling with the gravity. Okay, I can rotate it a little bit. Play. Oh, and you can see. It's not how the chairs work. It's actually because of a collision. Yeah, that's more like it. That's more how chairs work. So, as you can see, this type of movement is actually not calculated. Like we can't calculate it in any way predictable. So it's always will fall depending on the physics. As you can see here, I can even push it with my character, or even jump on it. I hope it will not glitch me. No. Yeah. So it's already simulating. But if we want to animate this object, for example, I need to create a blueprint. And this is actually really important. So let's create our first little blueprint. So first I will create a blueprint class, and this is the types of blueprint objects which I was talking about before. So let's see what of them. They have really short descriptions which are really helpful here. Actor. An actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. So the actor is everything. This is an actor. The stairs are the actors. This block is an actor. So everything is an actor. The actor can be static, the actor can be animated, it doesn't matter. Everything is an actor. So it's everything which can be placed in the world. Pawn is an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller. So our character, right? Let me just zoom on it. Yeah. Our character is a pawn. So as the name suggests, it's a pawn because we like controlling him. So it's a pawn is like the character which can be controlled with a controller. Character, on the other side, is a type of pawn that includes the ability to walk around. So the pawn which we can possess can have no ability to move around or to interact. Actually, the walk around is actually a type of interaction. So we're getting the input, and it receives the input and responds to it with animation and the translation in different axes. So this is the character. This is the something uh, we can interact with. Player controller is actually the piece of code which actually dictates how the pawn is controlled. So is it flying, is it walking, is it swimming, is it jumping, is it just moving as you programmed it? So it's everything in the player controller. And the other one, game base mode, is actually a blueprint which defines the rules. Actor component and scene component are the components which can be added to this 4 types of blueprints. So if you want to create a blueprint for the chair, for example, to spin in place, I will use the actor blueprint, because I don't need to possess this chair to control it. This chair will not walk around. This chair won't be controlled by me in any way. I just want it to spin around. So I will choose actor. Let's name it blueprint chair. Alright, now we have our blueprint fired up. I will be really quick with this, because we already covered a lot of material today and I don't want to overwhelm you with it. So I'll really make it really simple here. So our chair, as you can see here, we took it from a static content and it was in props. As you can see here, it shows SM chair static mesh. So what can I do? I can just drag and drop the static chair here, static mesh of chair here, or I can add component and select static mesh. It shows chair because the chair is selected in my asset browser. But if I have nothing selected and go to add component, static mesh, you can see it adds a static mesh component. So, and we can name it chair mesh. And here you can see we have a slot for our static mesh, and we can just, as before, drag and drop it on this slot. As you can see, it's surrounded by green lines. It means you can put this object here and we have our static mesh. So the static mesh is our object, which is actually the geometry, right, which we have created in other software, for example. It's a component of our blueprint, which is named chair. So now to add a simple rotation to this static mesh, I'm adding another component, and as you can see from this list, there's lots of different stuff. I will just search here, and I'm adding a rotating movement. And then what I just need to do now is just to select the rotation rate. I want it to rotate around the z-axis, which is the top axis here, and 180 is actually too much. Let's say 24. And let's compile. Compiles our script, so every change which we're making in the code of our blueprint, in this case our chair blueprint, we need to compile first, and let's save it. And now if we click play, nothing happens because I forget to turn off the simulating of physics. Oh yeah, and nothing happens because it's not our blueprint, it's just the static mesh actor which was added. So I need to add my blueprint which I created. Yeah. So, and if we now click play, you can see the chair is rotating because I edited the script of this chair, its blueprint, and added the rotating component. So this is how the basics of this engine work. So you have different kinds of objects, different kinds of blueprints which you can create. It can be very confusing. I'm really suggesting you to get on quick start tutorials from the Unreal Engine. You can find them in your launcher in Learn bookmark. You can see Get Started with Unreal Engine 4. It's all the basics we are covered today, actually. but there is maybe some stuff, additional stuff which you will be interested in. So there's a lot of tutorials here too, so you can check them out. Unreal Engine Online Learning. This is a YouTube channel for with tutorials. So if you want to check this out, you can you can definitely do that. We'll go steadily into more VR stuff because we are more focused on this. All this basic stuff you can actually learn for yourself. Of course, I will help you with that, like with this stream. We'll tell you everything from the beginning. But later on, the more and more we are going to dive into the Unreal Engine, the more we will go into VR direction and our artistic projects than anything else. So let's check the chat. Julia is typing, is it possible to ask you something about Maya? Maybe not now. Yeah, maybe not now because we are talking about Unreal Engine. But Maya definitely. Use Discord if you want to know anything. If you need just some help on Maya, if you are making something and you want to, you don't know how to make something, to do something in Maya, or you lost some, part of functionality in the program, you can just type on Discord. We will hop in screen sharing, and we will show you how it's all working. So this stream exactly was about Unreal Engine. But if you need a stream about Maya, when you can go through the basics and show you how everything is done, I can always do that too. Okay. So yeah, if you have problems with Maya, we can start another stream, or you can address that with us in the direct messages on Discord. Okay, so you can see there is no much questions here. Okay, so I thank you very much. So next time we will go more into Unreal Engine. Maybe in between we will put some Maya or Max. Okay, Luca wonders, I would like to have just some general thoughts on Maya. Yeah, as I said, we can do this, no problem. Also, but as I say, there's tons of tutorials on YouTube. So if you want to start like general stuff, you can always hit them. But if you want something more project centered, if you want something which is actually important for your project and where you want it to work and you can't, so yeah, we can help you with this, and this will be more productive, I think. So yeah, thank you guys, and see you next time. Have a nice end of your day. Bye.